In the heart of an ancient jungle, where time stands still and the laws of nature are absolute, one beast reigns. Kovu, the king of the wild, stands tall and proud. His massive chest rises and falls with every breath, muscles rippling under his fur. His eyes are fierce, a gaze that commands respect and fear in equal measure. He is the embodiment of strength, of primal instinct, of the ancient laws that govern this untamed land. For years, he has been the undisputed alpha, protecting his tribe, defending his territory, and ruling with wisdom and power. Strength, instinct, honor. These are the qualities that make him the true leader of the jungle. But from the minds of men, a challenger has been born. Not from flesh and bone, but from steel, code, and algorithms. A17, the AI ape, rises from the cold, sterile environment of a high-tech lab. Its glowing red sensors scan the world, calculating and analyzing every movement, every detail. It is built for one purpose: to dominate. Programmed with the intelligence of countless gorillas and the capability to evolve beyond them, it is a creation of pure innovation. It is the pinnacle of artificial intelligence, designed to be stronger, faster, smarter than any living creature. Nature versus machine. Primal instinct versus artificial intelligence. Two worlds, two alphas. Only one can reign supreme. Who will lead the jungle? Who is the true alpha? In the deep, untouched corners of the jungle, where the trees stretch high into the sky and the air is thick with the sounds of wildlife, Kovu reigns supreme. His territory is vast, and every corner is sacred. It's a place where the laws of nature govern every living being, where the survival of the fittest isn't just a saying, it's reality. Here, in this kingdom of green, Kovu's strength and wisdom have made him the undisputed leader. He has led his troop through countless challenges, always standing at the front, always ready to defend his family. His power is unmatched, but it's his intelligence, his ability to understand his surroundings and protect those he loves, that truly sets him apart. Kovu is more than a king. He's a protector, a ruler forged by years of living in the wild. But on the outskirts of this jungle, in a hidden lab surrounded by concrete and steel, the story of Unit A17 begins. The AI ape was conceived in a laboratory where the boundaries of nature and technology blur. Scientists, driven by the desire to create the ultimate being, studied every detail of gorilla behavior. They watched Kovu's every move, studied his leadership, and tracked his every decision. From this data, they constructed Unit A17, an artificial being designed not only to mimic the gorilla's strength, but to surpass it. A17 is different. It was created with advanced artificial intelligence, programmed to learn and adapt. Every action it takes is calculated, every decision is based on data, and every movement is precise. The creators wanted an alpha that could lead with logic and efficiency, a being that would adapt, evolve, and outlast anything the natural world could throw at it. But as the machine systems grew more advanced, something unexpected happened. A17 began to question its purpose. It began to analyze the role of leadership and dominance in the natural world, particularly the way Kovu led his troop. And in this moment of self-awareness, the challenge was born. The AI ape, once a mere tool, now saw Kovu as a test of power, control, and what it truly means to be the alpha. Kovu and A17 are on a collision course. Two beings, one from the earth, the other from technology, both determined to be the true leader of the jungle. But what makes an alpha? Is it the power to conquer, the intelligence to outwit, or the strength to endure? The answer lies somewhere in the space between flesh and metal. Kovu's rise to power wasn't just about strength, it was about survival. Born in the dense heart of the jungle, Kovu fought for his place in a world where every day was a battle. From a young age, he was tested by predators, storms, and rival groups. He learned quickly that it wasn't enough to be strong. He had to be wise, patient, and always ahead of the game. Kovu's leadership was born from his ability to understand the complexities of his world. He didn't just rule through power, he earned the respect of his troop by protecting them, teaching them, and leading them with a careful balance of strength and wisdom. Every decision he made was guided by an unspoken bond with his family and the jungle itself. For years, Kovu had no rival, no challenger strong enough to threaten his reign. But when the humans arrived, everything changed. They came with their strange, unnatural machines, and soon they began to observe the gorilla tribe. They saw Kovu's power, his intelligence, and his dominance. They wanted to understand what made him such an effective leader, what made him the alpha. And so, they studied him, tracking his every move, analyzing his behavior, and building the perfect imitation, the AI ape, Unit A17. A17 was designed with one purpose, to surpass Kovu. Created in a lab, the AI ape was built to replicate the physical strength of a gorilla, but with an added layer of artificial intelligence that allowed it to learn, adapt, and evolve beyond any creature in the wild. The researchers fed it data from Kovu's behavior, mimicking his movements, his decisions, and his leadership style. But they didn't stop there. A17's AI was built to learn from every situation it encountered, to get smarter, faster, and stronger with each challenge. Unlike Kovu, who was shaped by instinct and experience, A17 was shaped by code, algorithms, and data. At first, A17 was nothing more than a tool, a creation meant to study and understand the dynamics of jungle leadership. But as it gained more knowledge, it began to develop its own thoughts. It didn't just want to observe anymore, it wanted to prove its superiority. The more it learned about Kovu, the more it believed it could do better. And so, the stage was set. The battle for supremacy wasn't just about power anymore. It was about the very essence of leadership itself. Who would be the true alpha, the one forged by nature, or the one designed by man? It was a quiet morning in the jungle when the tension first began to build. The sun had just risen, casting golden light across the dense foliage. Kovu, ever vigilant, stood on a high ledge, overlooking his troop as they began their day. His eyes scanned the horizon, alert to any signs of danger. The air was thick with the usual sounds of the jungle, the chirps of birds, the rustle of leaves, and the occasional call of a distant animal. But something was different today. A strange feeling lingered in the air. The animals seemed uneasy, their movements jerky and cautious. Kovu's instincts told him something was coming. Far beyond the tree line, at the edge of his territory, a new presence had arrived. Unit A17, the AI ape, had crossed into the jungle. Its sleek mechanical form cut through the underbrush with unnatural precision. The heavy thud of its steps resonated through the jungle, unsettling the wildlife around it. A17 had been designed for efficiency, and it moved through the jungle like a predator, but one that didn't quite belong. Its cold, calculated movements betrayed no emotion, no hesitation. It wasn't just walking through the jungle, it was analyzing, learning, preparing. Kovu felt the ground beneath him shift as he noticed the first signs of the AI ape's intrusion. His sharp eyes caught the metallic gleam of A17's body through the trees. There, in the distance, he saw the figure, tall, unnervingly precise, and unmistakably not of this world. For a moment, Kovu paused. He wasn't sure what to make of it. Was it a threat, or just another curious intruder? But something in the air told him that this encounter would not be like any other. The jungle had never seen anything like A17 before, and neither had Kovu. With a low growl, Kovu moved. He was ready to confront whatever challenge had entered his domain. His every step was calculated, his muscles coiled in anticipation. The air between him and the intruder grew thick, charged with a silent tension. Both Kovu and A17 moved toward each other, neither one willing to back down. It wasn't just a meeting of two beings, it was a clash of two worlds: nature against technology, primal instinct against artificial intelligence. When they finally came face to face, neither Kovu nor A17 made the first move. The jungle fell silent, as if holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Kovu stared into the glowing red sensors of the AI ape, his eyes full of wariness and pride. He had seen countless predators and rivals in his life, but this one was different. It was a creation, something that had never been born of the jungle. It was a machine, but it had come into his territory. And that, in Kovu's eyes, was a challenge. A17, on the other hand, stood still, its sensors flickering as it analyzed Kovu. It didn't feel fear or hesitation. It felt something else, a desire to test its abilities, to prove its superiority. This wasn't just a confrontation with a wild animal. This was a test of control, of leadership, and of power. Who would rise above? Who would lead the jungle? For now, there was only silence, but it was the calm before the storm. The real battle was yet to come. The silence between Kovu and A17 hung in the air, a fragile pause before the inevitable clash. Then, without warning, Kovu made the first move. With a powerful roar, he lunged forward, his massive arms swinging with precision and power. The ground shook beneath him as he charged, each step sending vibrations through the jungle. He was no stranger to battle. His strength and experience in the wild were unmatched. The trees around him seemed to bend in his wake as he hurtled toward the mechanical intruder. A17 reacted in an instant, its glowing red sensors adjusting to Kovu's every move. The AI ape sidestepped, its movements unnaturally fast, calculated and precise. It didn't have the raw power of Kovu, but it had something else: speed and the ability to analyze every action before it happened. The two collided in a burst of motion, Kovu's massive fists connecting with the cold metallic body of A17. There was a loud clang as the metal dented under the force of the blow, but A17 didn't flinch. Instead, it countered with a swift kick, sending Kovu stumbling backward. The battle was on. Kovu quickly regained his footing, his eyes narrowed with fierce determination. He wasn't just fighting for dominance, he was fighting to protect everything he held dear. With another mighty roar, he charged once more, using the jungle itself to his advantage. He grabbed hold of a thick vine hanging from a tree and swung it like a weapon, aiming for A17's torso. The vine wrapped around the robot's arm, but A17 didn't break stride. It used its superior strength to rip the vine away, then used its powerful legs to leap backward, putting distance between itself and Kovu. A17 wasn't just adapting, it was learning. Every move Kovu made was processed, analyzed, and countered. It wasn't relying on brute strength, it was relying on logic. The AI ape system quickly calculated the best strategies for avoiding Kovu's attacks and retaliating with precision. Each movement was like a chess match, calculated, deliberate, and controlled. Kovu wasn't done yet, though. He was the alpha of this jungle, and he wasn't going to be bested by a machine. With a primal growl, he tore through the underbrush, moving faster than before. He picked up a large, jagged rock and hurled it at A17. The rock slammed into the robot's shoulder, causing it to stagger for just a moment. That brief opening was all Kovu needed. He charged again, this time aiming for A17's legs, trying to knock it off balance, but A17 was ready. It anticipated the move and swiftly countered with a perfectly executed kick to Kovu's side, sending him crashing into a nearby tree. The impact shook the ground. Kovu groaned, but quickly rose to his feet, his eyes blazing with rage. He knew this fight wasn't just about strength. It was about proving who had the true power, who could truly lead. The battle raged on, neither side willing to give up, both combatants locked in a deadly dance. Kovu used the jungle to his advantage, trying to outmaneuver the AI, while A17 relied on its data, constantly adjusting its tactics. Neither was willing to relent, and the jungle around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the final move. The fight was far from over, but the outcome was uncertain. Would Kovu's raw power and instinct be enough to overpower the calculating, relentless machine? Or would A17's technological superiority prove to be the ultimate edge? The jungle watched, its fate resting on the shoulders of these two alpha beings, locked in a battle to determine who would truly lead. Amid the chaos of their battle, something unexpected began to happen. As Kovu and A17 continued to clash, each one trying to overpower the other, the fight shifted. Kovu, bruised and bloodied, found himself pausing for a moment. His chest heaved with exertion as he locked eyes with the AI ape. For the first time, there was a hesitation in his movements. Not out of fear, but a sudden realization. A17 wasn't like any enemy he had faced before. It didn't fight with the same instincts he knew. It wasn't driven by hunger or rage, it was driven by logic. The AI ape wasn't trying to kill him. It was trying to learn. In that brief moment of silence, A17 stopped as well, its sensors flickering as it processed the situation. It didn't immediately press its advantage, but instead, it watched Kovu carefully, analyzing his every move. Kovu's raw power was still a threat, but there was something more to this fight now. A17 wasn't just fighting to win, it was fighting to understand. The realization hit Kovu like a wave. This wasn't just about domination. This was a challenge of purpose, a challenge to the very nature of leadership. He had spent his entire life fighting to be the alpha, to be the protector of his troop. But here, standing before him, was something that didn't need to fight with brute force. It was a being that could learn from every encounter, adapt, and evolve. It was a machine, yes, but it was growing in ways Kovu never imagined. Kovu took a step back, his muscles still tense but no longer in anger. He began to walk around A17 slowly, his movements calculated, observing the way the robot responded. A17 turned its head to follow Kovu's every step. It wasn't preparing for another attack, it was studying him. Kovu could feel the shift in the air. The fight wasn't about who could overpower the other anymore. It was about something deeper. Understanding the jungle, understanding the balance of power, understanding what it truly meant to lead. Kovu stopped a few feet away from A17, and then, slowly, he sat down. The AI ape mirrored his movement, lowering itself to the ground as well. There they were, side by side, two beings so different in form and function, yet in this moment, bound by a shared purpose. Kovu's chest rose and fell in slow, deep breaths. He wasn't showing weakness. He was showing strength. Strength in restraint, strength in wisdom. He didn't need to dominate this machine. He just needed to lead by example. A17 sensors flickered again, processing the change in behavior. It didn't attack. It didn't escalate the conflict. Instead, it seemed to pause, as if realizing that dominance wasn't about sheer force or control. It was about balance. It was about understanding the deeper connection to the world around you. The AI ape had learned. It had learned that leadership wasn't something that could be programmed or artificially created. It wasn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It was about knowing when to fight and when to step back. And in that moment, A17 made a choice. It powered down its combat protocols, its once glowing sensors dimming, no longer focused on combat, but on something else, something that resembled peace. Kovu looked at the machine for a moment longer, his eyes still full of wariness, but also a quiet understanding. He stood slowly, turning back toward his troop. The battle was over, not because one had won over the other, but because both had realized something important. True leadership wasn't about domination. It was about wisdom, understanding, and knowing when to show strength and when to show restraint. As Kovu walked away, A17 remained still, its sensors flickering as it observed. It was learning, it was evolving, and in that jungle, under the watchful eyes of both machine and beast, the true alpha had revealed itself. It wasn't about brute force or mechanical precision. It was about balance, understanding, and the strength to lead without violence. For now, the jungle was at peace. But the lesson had been learned. The real alpha wasn't the one who conquered. It was the one who could adapt, grow, and lead with wisdom. The jungle, once filled with tension and conflict, slowly began to return to its natural rhythm. The birds resumed their calls, the rustling of leaves echoed through the trees, and the animals cautiously returned to their daily routines. Kovu, the mighty silverback, continued to lead his troop, though there was something different about him now. His presence had always been commanding, but now there was an air of wisdom about him that hadn't been there before. He had faced a challenge unlike any other, one that tested not only his strength, but his understanding of what it meant to be the alpha. Though the AI ape, A17, was no longer an immediate threat, it wasn't forgotten. The jungle wasn't the same place it had been before its arrival. The events of the past days had left a mark on both the wildlife and Kovu himself. The encounter with the AI had taught him something profound, that leadership wasn't just about power. It was about adaptability, about learning, about evolving. Kovu's leadership had always been about survival, about brute strength and dominance, but now he knew there was more to being the alpha. It was about finding harmony between power and wisdom, between instinct and understanding. A17, though not a part of the jungle's natural order, had shown Kovu a new way of thinking. The AI ape, after all, had its own form of leadership, one that was rooted in logic and precision, free from the primal instincts that governed the rest of the jungle. While A17 might not have understood the true essence of the jungle, it had understood one thing. Leadership is not about conquering everything in your path, but about adapting to the world around you, learning, and growing. And that lesson had resonated in Kovu's heart. A17, too, had undergone a change. It had entered the jungle with one purpose, to prove itself as the true alpha. But after its encounter with Kovu, something inside the AI had shifted. It no longer saw the jungle as a battleground, but as a living, breathing entity, one that couldn't be conquered through sheer force alone. It was learning to respect the world it had entered, understanding that leadership in this wild place was about balance. As the days passed, A17 began to explore the edges of the jungle, watching from a distance. The jungle, which had once been a battlefield, had transformed into a place of quiet coexistence. Kovu continued to lead his troop with the same strength and wisdom that had made him the alpha, but now there was a new layer to his leadership. He was more thoughtful, more aware of the subtle shifts in the jungle, the needs of his troop, and the ever-changing world around him. He understood now that his power was not only in his physical might, but in his ability to adapt, to lead with both strength and intelligence. A17, too, had evolved. It had spent countless days observing the rhythms of the jungle, learning from the creatures that lived there. It had no desire to replace Kovu, but it was beginning to see that there was more to being a leader than just logic and calculation. The machine had learned to respect the jungle, its creatures, and even the unpredictable nature of life. Though it had once come to the jungle to prove itself superior, it had discovered something far more valuable: the ability to learn from the world around it and to grow beyond its original programming. Kovu's troop had noticed the changes as well. The younger gorillas, who had once been wary of A17, now saw it not as a threat, but as an enigmatic figure in their world. A17 was no longer a combatant. It was a silent observer, quietly watching from the shadows. Sometimes, when the troop played near the edges of the jungle, A17 would appear, its cold, metallic form almost blending with the natural surroundings. But instead of an enemy, it was now regarded as a strange but neutral presence. The jungle had become a place of balance, a place where the natural world and the artificial world coexisted, each learning from the other. Kovu had become a wiser leader, understanding that true strength came not from overpowering everything around him, but from respecting the balance of nature. And A17 had become something more than just a machine. It no longer tried to engage in combat, but instead observed the way Kovu led his troop. It studied the guerrilla's interactions with the others, the way he protected, guided, and even played with the younger members of his troop. A17, in its own way, was beginning to understand what made Kovu the true alpha. It wasn't the strength or the ability to fight, it was the connection Kovu had to the jungle, to his troop, and to the balance of life itself. Kovu, for his part, had grown used to the quiet presence of A17 in the jungle. The machine no longer seemed like a threat, but rather a curious observer. The two never crossed paths directly, but their unspoken understanding was clear. The battle for dominance was over, and in its place, a new dynamic had emerged. Kovu continued to lead, but now with a deeper sense of awareness. He knew that the world was always changing, always evolving, and that his leadership had to do the same. And A17, in its own way, had found its place in the jungle as well. It was no longer a mere creation or an intruder. It had become something more, a student of the jungle, learning its ways, understanding its complexities. As time passed, Kovu and A17 became symbols of the changing nature of leadership, one rooted in tradition, the other in technology. Both had learned from each other, and though they never fully became allies, there was an unspoken respect between them. Kovu continued to protect his troop, maintaining the natural order, while A17 continued to adapt, quietly watching from the edges of the jungle, its purpose now clear, not to conquer, but to learn. In the end, the true alpha was not defined by strength alone. It was defined by the ability to adapt, to learn, and to find balance in a world that was constantly changing. And in this jungle, the legacy of that lesson would carry on for generations to come. As the weeks passed, the once intense rivalry between Kovu and A17 slowly faded into the background. It had become a student of the jungle, a creature of logic and data that had learned the value of patience, respect, and even humility. One day, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the jungle, Kovu sat atop his favorite perch, watching over his troop. His eyes, once fierce with the need to dominate, were now calm, thoughtful. He knew that the jungle would always be his domain, but he also knew that it was no longer just about strength. It was about understanding the world he ruled, about protecting it, and about guiding his troop with wisdom. From a distance, A17 stood still, its sensors taking in the sight of the jungle around it. The machine was not part of the troop, but it had become part of the ecosystem, a quiet observer of the world it had entered. It had learned what it needed to learn, and though its purpose had never been entirely clear, it now understood that true leadership was not about proving superiority. It was about knowing when to lead, when to listen, and when to allow the world to unfold on its own terms. In that moment, the jungle seemed to breathe in unison. The sun dipped below the horizon, the first stars began to appear, and the sounds of the jungle filled the air once more. Kovu, the silverback, the mighty protector, and A17, the artificial being, had each found their place in this world. Neither had emerged as the true alpha in the way they had once envisioned. Instead, they had both learned that leadership wasn't a matter of domination. It was a matter of coexistence. The jungle was no longer a place of conflict. It was a place where the wild and the synthetic could both find a home, a place where wisdom, strength, and technology could work together in harmony. The battle for dominance had given way to something greater, a lesson that would echo through the jungle for generations to come. As the night fell, Kovu's troop huddled together for warmth, and A17 remained in the distance, silent and watchful. The jungle had found its new rhythm, and with it, the understanding that the true alpha wasn't defined by power or strength. It was defined by the ability to evolve, to adapt, and to lead with both heart and mind.